Are you good? I should have asked you first. I'm good if you're good. Okay. Always ready.
Peter's always good. Let the record reflect. Peter's
I
always.
do not believe, I don't know if Adam Ballard has requested to be on.
Okay.
So we'll just have to ask if he's here
Great.
I'll know when I get the roll call.
Super. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here on a balmy Thursday morning. I'd like to call the CMAP Regional Economy Committee to order, please. This meeting is being live streamed. Members, in order for online attendees to hear, please make sure you unmute your microphone when speaking. Identify yourself, please, when making or seconding a motion so the secretary can capture who's making that motion. For those attending in person, please complete the sign-in sheet located in the hallway before you leave. If you wish to make public comment, please fill out the public comment card and return it to a staff member. And for those participating via Zoom, thank you for joining us. Please keep your microphone muted unless you're called upon to speak. When appropriate on the agenda, we'll request comments from those online, and you can indicate your desire to speak via the chat box. Staff is monitoring the Zoom and will recognize you when it is your time to speak. So with that, Tony, please, could you do roll call?
Thank you, Chair Tucker. Good morning, everybody. Adam Ballard. Okay, Chair Bob Tucker.
Here.
Caitlin Ritter. Court Carlson. Darnell Shields. Dion Bowe. We'll get there. Joan Fox. Josh Potter. Kendra Freeman. Kevin Kramer. Co-Chair Kimberly Porter.
Here.
Kirsty De Laurentiis.
Here.
Marissa Lewis. Heather Mullins. Peter Kretikos.
Here.
Shannon McGee. Dr. Tiffany McDowell. She's running a little late, I believe. Nicholas Reel from DOTH in place for Jesse and Tara. And Tracy Sanders. Here. Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Great, thank you, Tony. Let me double check now to see if Adam Ballard's been able to join us yet. I do not hear him. If staff can let me know if he joins, then we can always admit him into the meeting. All right, let's jump to the agenda. Are there any changes or, well, first, are there any changes to the agenda? If not, I'll ask if there's any other announcements from staff.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us in person at the old post office. I'm Stephanie Pfeiffer. I'm the Deputy of Planning. I'm going to share just some high-level highlights from the agency for all of you. First off, just wanted to announce we did have our technical assistance call for projects. And again, we had a resounding reply from that. We had over 80 applications from municipalities across the region with 69 different jurisdictions. So lots of interest in our program. Really excited about that. We did award 30 projects through that call for projects, and it means we're going to provide technical assistance to local communities to improve traffic safety, make travel more accessible, increase transportation choices, and help them prosper in years to come. So this program, in conjunction with the call with RTA, has been really popular and a really great way for us to be able to go out and support our communities. Also, this year, the Illinois General Assembly awarded CMAP a $2 million grant for the upcoming fiscal year. This recognizes that it's an essential role that the agency plays in supporting those communities and that they need assistance beyond transportation. And so most of our funding is transportation funding. This allows us to have $2 million of funding that is more general and open-ended so that we can support communities in different ways outside of their transportation needs. And so we'll be doing some enhanced technical assistance in addition to those 30 projects I just mentioned with that additional funding. So we're really excited to be supported by the General Assembly in that endeavor. Erin Alleman, the executive director, has also been out in the region, out in the country. She's been in DC recently representing CMAP. She is now the board chair for the Coalition for America's Gateways and Trade Corridors. So she's been in DC on a couple of panels, really talking about federal freight funding, other really key economic development issues for our region at a national level, which has been really good for the region to have that representation. She's also participated in the Brookings Institute Pathways to Regional Prosperity. This again is taking a regional look at how we can bring prosperity to all of our communities, and that's again at a national level. And then the other thing to note is that you all saw our job access tool a few months ago at one of the meetings. That tool has gained a lot of traction nationally as well and received a National Planning Award for innovation. So it's something that we do think is going to be replicated in other parts of the country. So that is also a good thing, getting the word out for tools that will help all of the country grow in economic development. The last thing I wanted to just bring up is the existing conditions report for the regional transportation plan. So every 4 years, we do a regional transportation plan. And as part of that, we sort of assess the existing conditions of our transportation networks. That has been completed and presented to the CMAP board. And it really shows how some of the travel patterns and have changed in Northeastern Illinois and how then we can react to that and how to take advantage of opportunities, but also overcome different challenges. So we have an exciting agenda today. So with that, I will turn it back over to the chair and we'll get started on our agenda.
Great, thanks, Stephanie. Any other updates then? Presumably not. That was a lot.
Yeah.
All good stuff. Real quickly, let's get to the approval of the minutes. We were just commenting before, last time we were together was September 19th. Again, good to see everybody in person. Can I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes from September 19th, 2024? Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you very much. Any other comments, edits? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, any abstentions? Great, your minutes are approved. Now we're on to new business. Tony, I think I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chair Tucker. Next on the agenda is the fiscal year 2026 calendar of workshops and meetings that we're proposing for the year. Our fiscal year starts July 1, so soon, right here, we're here. And so this is what we're proposing. If you recall, when we were here in September, we did amend the bylaws, thank you all very much, to not only allow you to send delegates or proxies in your place, because now organizations are the members, but then also we will have at least one in-person meeting a year, so our annual meeting, which is what today is, and then proposing a handful of workshops throughout the year. I added an extra one in there because I'd rather have things on the calendar in the event things pop up. And so these will be the proposed meeting dates. Something else that now allows us with our bylaws is to either cancel or reschedule these if necessary. But the workshops are meant to be virtual, so we do not need an in-person quorum. As I said last year, if everybody does want to come here in person for one of these 5 meetings, I would gladly open the doors at 9:30 for you all to come here. But I have these 5 on here that we're proposing, and I'm also encouraging the committee to come to us with some agenda items as well. This does not need to be only CMAP projects throughout the year too. So if you have something in particular that you'd like to take to the committee and others, this also allows us to invite others and have others participate in our workshops as well. So I would encourage you all to bring any economic development issues or otherwise and challenges or exciting things to this committee. And I'd love to give you space and time to present and talk about that. So that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
That's great. Thank you, Tony. Can I get a motion to approve the fiscal year 2026 committee meeting schedule as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Kim. Is there a second? Oh, no, you beat him. No, you got it. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? Great, thank you. And will we get some meeting populations of our calendar shortly?
Yes, we will have our staff send out the calendar holds to everybody after this meeting.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Modernizing the sales tax. I think I'm going to turn it over to my friend Elizabeth. There she is.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Bob, or Chair Tucker, for introducing me. For those of you that don't know, my name is Elizabeth Ginsburg, and I am a senior policy analyst here at CMAP in the Regional Policy and Implementation Division, and I use she, her pronouns. I am excited to be here today to chat with you all about our recent work related to the funding elements of the PART report, especially the Modernizing Illinois Sales Tax report. As you may know, The state Senate passed a transit bill in the final minutes of the legislative session on May 31st, but the House did not vote on that same bill, so we do not have a solution for the transit fiscal cliff at this time. As everyone works to kind of better understand the revenue options that were included in that Senate bill, as well as the new responsibilities and the associated costs that were added to the new Regional Transit Authority, it's important that we continue to discuss the durable revenues that are needed to sustainably support transit operations. Next slide. As a quick reminder of why we are here and why we're talking about this, the RTA estimates that the transit system will face a $770 million operating deficit in 2026, which is about 20% of the transit agency's total operating budget. The fiscal cliff is largely associated with the sudden impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, which accelerated ridership declines and transformed work patterns. The ridership declines that we saw in 2020, we still see them today. Although recovery has been slow, we're expected to reach only about 75% of the pre-pandemic levels in 2025. And as a result, fare revenues continue to be lower than ideal. Although the transit agencies have been relying on federal relief funding to balance their budgets since the pandemic, these funds will be depleted in 2026. At the same time, the PART report discusses at length how long-term structural challenges are also related to this issue. And the long-term underfunding of transit has been causing ridership declines and impacting service for quite some time. Next slide. There will be some pretty significant consequences if this budget deficit is not addressed. Due to the many fixed expenses of running transit service, this 20% funding shortfall equates to about 40% will equate to about 40% service cuts. And given the lack of a legislative solution at this time, the RTA and the service boards are currently in the process of determining what that 2026 budget will look like. According to previous CMAP modeling, this 40% cut could correspond to over 100 cities, towns, and villages losing access to Metro service, many communities losing access to CTA train service, and more than 150 bus routes being cut. The consequences of this service reduction would be devastating and would impact everyone, whether or not they ride transit. Next slide. When CMAP was asked to create the plan of action for regional transit, in addition to the recommendations on strengthening the system and improving regional governance, we spent a lot of time identifying a menu of solutions for how to address the fiscal cliff. And together, these three pillars are important for fully addressing the long-term issues. Again, today we'll be discussing the kind of fiscal piece of this, which is kind of the areas where we're still trying to figure things out. Next slide. To set the stage for the sales tax discussion specifically, I want to underscore that throughout the PART process, we heard from countless stakeholders that they don't want to simply fill the budget gap. Everyone wants to see more frequent transit service, more reliable transit service, and they want to go more places and do it more often. So the funding component of the report addresses not only filling the cliff, but also providing a transformational investment. Next slide. To deliver these system improvements, the transformational investment was estimated to be $1.5 billion in new operating funding. This includes, as I said, filling the gap, but also increasing service frequency and reliability and making investments in a truly integrated fare system, as well as safety, security, and cleanliness across the system. Many of these operational improvements will also require capital investments, so we'll talk about some of those funding solutions as well. Next slide. To get to the 1.5 billion, though, everyone will need to contribute. Unfortunately, no one has been able to identify a revenue solution that will single-handedly provide the full level of investment that's needed. And therefore, the solution depends on everyone pitching in. This includes transit agencies and riders contributing through cost growth mitigation and higher fares that keep pace with inflation. It includes a substantial commitment from the region, and it also includes a substantial support from the state. The state should play an important role by providing more robust support for underfunded state and federal mandates, and also critically by modernizing the state sales tax base to include more consumer services. Next slide. It's important to kind of take a moment and think about why state support was identified as an important part of this solution moving forward. Currently, as you can see on this chart, Illinois has historically provided less funding for the region's transit system than our peer systems receive from their respective state governments. Before the pandemic, the RTA region received roughly 17% of its funding from the state, whereas systems in DC and New York City received roughly a quarter of their funding, and other peers like SEPTA and Philadelphia received almost half of their funding from the state of Pennsylvania. Next slide. One of the main ways that the state currently supports the system is through annual appropriations for PACE ADA service and also these reduced fare and free ride programs. However, although the region is mandated to provide these services and believes in these services, the state support is quite limited. On the PACE ADA side, the fiscal year 2026 state appropriation provides less than 5% of the funding that's needed to provide that service. And the funding provided for free, reduced, and free ride programs is about 20% of the foregone revenue that the transit agencies are losing through those programs. Next slide. So zooming back out a little bit, modernizing the sales tax base is one of the main ways that we can provide the state with new revenue to actually provide this additional support that's being asked of them. In the PART report, CMAP estimated that expanding the sales tax to a broad base of services could add nearly $2 billion in new annual state revenues, $315 million for the RTA, and over $400 million for local governments, both counties and municipalities. It's important, so a portion of this $2 billion from the state is what is needed to provide the state the support that's being asked. Next slide. When we think about providing the $1.5 billion transformational investment, it's important to think about how these different revenues can interact with one another. At the bottom of the funding stack here in the dark blue, we see the $315 million that the RTA could generate itself from a modernized sales tax, as well as the $95 million that would automatically flow through from the state match of the RTA sales tax. And then we have that increased support for paratransit and reduced fares. So on its own, the sales tax modernization could contribute almost $900 million to the system in 2026. Of course, other revenues can be a part of this and should be a part of this. And many of the revenues that were put forth in the Senate bill could be that, things like the climate impact delivery fee, the TNC fee, and that's where a lot of energy will be spent over the course of the summer. Next slide. The reason I'm really here to talk with you all and very excited to share is the building on the work that we did in PART. This past spring, CMAP joined a coalition of policy and civic leaders to write a joint report recommending that the state modernize the sales tax. And it's here in the flesh. We have copies if people are interested. The coalition was comprised of CMAP as well as the Civic Federation, the Center for Tax and Budget Accountability, and the Illinois Economic Policy Institute. Although potentially strange bedfellows for CMAP as a government agency, each of these organizations have long advocated for modernizing the sales tax. The sales tax is a critical revenue source for the state. It's the second largest revenue source, as well as for local governments and obviously our transit agencies. However, the current sales tax is mostly applied to goods and only a few services. When we think about what that looks like in our day-to-day life, there's some easily understood examples. For example, it's summer, it's hot. If you go to the store and you buy a lawnmower, you will pay sales tax. But if you hire a landscaping services, you will not. If you want to stay at home and be cool and you buy some weights to work out at home, you will pay sales tax. If you pay for a gym membership, you will not. So going forward, the state should modernize the system by making sure that everything is being taxed adequately and in a way that reflects our modern economy. Of course, there are some shifting headwinds at the state and particularly in the governor's office. We know in the last budget cycle that he stated that he did not want to see any broad-based tax reform. But we also know that this next year is full of uncertainty when it comes to the federal budget, as well as our own state revenues. So the opportunities still exist. Next slide. Now, why should we modernize the sales tax? Largely, it's because consumer behavior has changed since the sales tax was first put in place, which was almost 100 years ago in 1933. Illinois' antiquated sales structure, which still primarily taxes goods, does not align with the way that we interact with the economy. And in fact, spending on consumer services has grown 2.5 times faster than spending on goods over the last 6 decades. Expanding the base to services is necessary if we want to keep up with our economy. Next slide. This is not a new idea, and in fact, Illinois is pretty far behind many of our peer and adjacent states. Illinois only taxes 29 services currently, and most of those are through excise taxes on specific things like utilities or parking. Whereas on average, other states tax nearly 58 services. And several of our neighbors, like Wisconsin and Iowa, tax over 80 different services. Next slide. Finally, a broader base is less regressive than the current sales tax that we have. Right now, lower income households spend about 60% of their spending on goods, and this includes necessities like food and clothing, which leaves little room for discretionary spending. At the same time, higher income households have more flexibility for spending on services, which is currently exempt essentially since it's not taxed. Higher income households spend nearly 5 times more money on services than lower income households. So broadening the sales tax base to include more consumer services can help fairly distribute the tax burden across these income classes. Next slide. At the same time, we know that the sales tax and many other revenue sources that our governments rely on are kind of inherently regressive. And a key way to address this regressivity is to use revenues to intentionally offset it through targeted tax relief for low-income households. This tax relief can be achieved in a number of ways. Many states, and Illinois already does this, provide earned income tax credits that are structured to reflect the federal EITC. And the report recommends that Illinois expand its existing EITC using the new revenues it generates through the modernized sales tax to provide tax relief for the folks who will still be paying more of their income on goods and services. Our consultants, SP Friedman, have been doing some analysis for us, and they estimate that increasing the Illinois EITC from 20% of income for eligible filers to 24% would cost approximately $80 million, which would be about 4 to 5% of that $2 billion that's going to the state. Other states offer examples of how specific sales tax credits could be provided. And many of these actually provide more relief than the earned income tax credit. Oklahoma's system offers $40 credits for every household member in eligible households, whereas Maine's system sets credits based on earned income levels and household size. And these are estimated, the investment related to these programs, were they to be implemented in Illinois, are estimated to range from $150 to $250 million, which is about 10 to 15% of the new state revenues estimated by PART. Alternatively, or in addition to these options, the report suggests using state and local government proceeds to fund property tax relief, whether through circuit breaker programs that target low-income taxpayers, or through reductions in existing property tax rates. Next slide. Of course, one of the most critical ways or easiest ways that we can balance tax regressivity is by providing public services. In addition to support for transit, a stronger state sales tax would provide the state with a way to fund other critical services, such as the evidence-based K through 12 education funding formula. Also, we know the state has made considerable progress addressing unfunded pension obligations and strengthening its reserve accounts in recent years, but there's still quite a ways to go for the state to reach fiscal solvency. For example, in the budget that was passed last month, we saw that these pension and rainy day payments were reduced significantly compared to recent years, largely due to uncertainty in the state's revenue pictures. So although modernizing the sales tax cannot fix all of the state's problems, we believe the time has come to move forward to address some of them. Next slide. Last but not least, I wanted to spend a few minutes sharing with you one of the most exciting contributions of the sales tax report, at least in my opinion, which is some considerable insight into why this hasn't been done before, and how it could be done thoughtfully and intentionally moving forward. The report recommends an independent advisory panel be formed to both help draft and review legislation to ensure constitutionality. The uniformity clause in the state constitution has been an obstacle in the past, but including clear legislative intent and taxing a broad base of services can kind of overcome this challenge. Also, the independent advisory panel can provide annual reports to the legislature to evaluate compliance from taxpayers, see if revenues are aligning with projections and understanding why not, and then also understanding impacts on taxpayers and service providers. For example, we've seen with the Level the Playing Field Act in the last few years, the Illinois Department of Revenue has had to make a few different adjustments to make sure that the collection of remote retail tax is being done effectively, and having subject matter experts can be an important part of that process. Next slide. That's all I have for you today, and I'm excited to hear your questions.
Great. Thank you, Elizabeth, very much. Great work. Questions? Christy.
So I'm wondering if you could scroll back probably about 3/4 of the way. You had a slide up that showed comparison to other states, and I think it was Maine and Oklahoma, but it might, no, this
Oh.
slide actually. Yeah, sorry, the next one, or I'm not sure which direction, but the one with the bar graph. So just questioning, you named where Illinois was in that, and so those numbers on the far right column are essentially what other states are taxing across a host of taxable, operations. Have you tabulated that list to see what, kind of the most likely direction Illinois could go in terms of both, kind of uniformity and receptivity to both the General Assembly and to constituents?
Yes, so the PART estimates are based in large part on assuming that we would implement Iowa's base in Illinois. So we've looked quite extensively at the Iowa legislation, and they tax 89 different services. And so all of the services that are listed, I know it's been a while, but there is an appendix to the sales tax memo that was a part of the PART report, and it lists all of those different services. I think even looking between, say, Iowa and Ohio, like the way that they identify services and things are quite different. But we think that we could identify a pretty broad base here in Illinois. Does that answer your question?
Yes, the follow-up to that, if I may, Chair Tucker, is, so presumably these were advanced as part of the discussion on transit funding, and a few of the items may have been advanced in the Senate, in the House bill that the Senate carried. Was there advocacy behind trying to broaden that base? And I know for many, many here might have listened in on the transit discussion yesterday, and really the House Working Group that was still, sort of open to other suggestions. And just wondering if there's any particular revenue, direction on expansion of revenue that's been more of interest to legislators, or where they're more receptive or pursuing, asking for data, et cetera.
I'm going to take a stab at answering that. I think so. Obviously, the bill included a few different revenue sources. It was the retail delivery fee, or also known as the climate impact fee, a regional fee on TNCs, things like Ubers and Lyfts, and then a regional real estate transfer tax. Those were all new revenues that were not identified in the PART report. And I think ever since PART was delivered, we've been in conversations with different legislators about all of the different funding options. So I think we're kind of continuing those conversations this summer. As we understand it, those conversations are happening to prep for the veto session in October. I think there's a lot of kind of good questions about those three revenue sources that were put forth in the legislation, but we're continuing to kind of highlight the sales tax, and we've heard excitement from legislators about the benefits that it provides, not only for transit, but also for the state budget.
So focusing on broadening sales tax.
Great, good question, Christy. Any other questions for Elizabeth? Kendra?
I guess I had a kind of a similar question, but somewhat trying to get to what is the political appetite for actually broadening the base on which we're doing the sales tax. It felt very much like in the report. I didn't read the whole report, but I read the executive summary, and so it didn't feel. Your presentation was more kind of grounded in this being a primary solution for the transit cliff, and the report didn't feel that way. So I'm just wondering, like, what is the framing you're thinking about going forward that would be most effective, and what is the potential political will as the governor is going to be launching his reelection campaign soon? Like, I'm sure he's not going to be campaigning on let's raise taxes. So how are y'all thinking about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're asking a lot of the same questions that you just asked and that everyone's asking. I will say, so the report was kind of co-authored by a few different organizations, and so we had to kind of step back. It's not purely CMAP, what CMAP thinks should happen, that all the money should go to transit, and obviously there are many other things that we CMAP care about. And so in this presentation, I think because now I am CMAP, we can talk a little bit about the pure benefits for transit. In terms of the governor's statements about broad-based sales tax or broad-based tax reform, I think it's my understanding that that was very kind of limited to this last budget process. He really wanted to make sure that people were thinking critically about the budgets that were being put forth and not just relying on increasing taxes to pass a budget for 2026. But the revenue picture was very unclear going into the budget process and is still unclear moving towards 2026. So the state will need to have conversations about how to raise revenue to support the budget. And we think that there's a lot of space there to continue having this conversation.
Great. Thank you, Kendra. Peter?
So I'm trying to figure out how, I applaud the work that's been done on this. My concern is that I was a revenue committee. I staffed the revenue committee for the state senate in 1980.
Mhm.
This has been going on at least since 45 years.
Mhm.
Okay. None of this is new. I remember suggesting that we consider that back then, and got a lot of strange stares from the Senate president and others. And we all saw it coming, that we needed to have a broader tax base. I think the current political environment makes it even more important that the state is more self-sufficient in terms of meeting the needs of the residents. But as I look at the arguments that are being presented, so two of the things that can be done with the additional revenues, one is to deal with the pension problem. Taxpayers don't see a thing out of that. Okay. Another is put money away for the rainy day fund. Taxpayers don't see anything on that. There's no tie, there's a very tenuous tie to delivery of services. Now, in the case of the RTA, you can say, okay, fine, that helps in terms of regional transit and all that, but that doesn't make a difference to somebody in Centralia, nor does it make a difference to somebody in Centralia to say, we could be more like Iowa or Indiana, which also has a fairly broad sales tax thing. So I don't, my concern is that it's a good solution. It's the narrative behind what it solves hasn't changed in 45 years. And I don't know how you advance this, and particularly in this current environment, when people have no patience for additional taxes, even though they may be offset in some other place. That making that connection is really tough. So I think, we all need to think more clearly about what's the value proposition here. And to say that we're going to have Harris School advising on this, who cares? That's great for a bunch of academics, but it's not something that, again, deals with sort of the pocketbook reality of getting something like this passed. So, I think the state's been remiss in not keeping its revenues, moving them forward to keep pace with demands. Blagojevich single-handedly undermined the state university system because he wouldn't raise revenues to help pay for advanced universities. And now you have a situation where they're all sucking air because they're getting cut off on the federal side. So I mean, this is not a partisan. I mean, this is not a political party thing. It's both sides. But I don't see the arguments. I haven't seen the arguments being advanced on sales tax. I mean, hell, I can write Ralph's editorial in my sleep. So his op-eds. So it's just a point. And I think there are a whole lot of smart people around that could probably figure out a better way to make the case. We just haven't put our minds to it.
Oh, thank you, Peter, for that cold dose of reality. Any other questions or comments? All right. Elizabeth, thank you again for the work. I think we all applaud the work. It's great job. Thank you.
Yeah, and again,
Also
we-
want to note, oh, sure, Christy, one more, sure.
So Christy DeLaurentis with SSMMA, just one thing, just in terms of your modeling, compared to the House, the House bill that the Senate passed a few short weeks ago, they were proposing dropping the fare box recovery system and from 50% to 25%. So Now, in terms of those blocks and those bars, has that shifted everything, or was that an assumption that CMAP and the team that you assembled to do some analysis anticipated? Because there's been a lot of discussion about the fare box, RTA's fare box recovery and how that's not, that's significantly higher than other
Mhm.
operating systems around the country. So just wondering if that was part of your model.
I can chat with some folks and get back to you. I do know that the requirement for the 50% fare box recovery ratio has been waived the last few years since the pandemic because of these ridership issues. And kind of hitting that ratio has always been a challenge for the system. So I think PART talks about, and I believe the advocacy around this has really been thinking about what is a reasonable fare box recovery ratio that ensures that the transit agencies are still collecting revenue and that riders are paying for the service, but we aren't overburdening the transit authority.
Interested to hear that, because that obviously will shift a lot of the numbers that were proposed, or, the sort of the splits. Okay,
Thank you all. Again, I have
Great.
copies of the report if you would like one.
Great. Thank you, Elizabeth. Just let the record reflect that Dion and Tiffany have joined us since the roll call, so welcome. Good to see you. We're going to move on now to the Northeastern Illinois Development Database. Dave, I think I'm going to turn it over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Dave Mork. I'm an analyst with the Research Analysis and Programming Division here at CMAP. And I apologize for presenting sitting down, but the new knee comes in next month. Anyway, what I'm going to talk about today is the Northeastern Illinois Development Database web map, which is an update to a project that we have been doing for many, many years here, both at CMAP and at our predecessor agency. Could I have the next slide, please? So what is NDD? NDD is an attempt to track all significant development and redevelopment across the 7-county metro area. It dates back to, it was started by Northeastern Illinois Planning Commission, which is predecessor agency at CMAP, an idea that actually the person who hired me came up with back in the 70s. And around 1987, computer technology finally caught up to the idea that we had. So we've established the database in 1987. We've been maintaining it ever since. I've been working with this database since I was hired at NIPSI 30 years ago. It covers all major land uses. So unlike commercial data sources, it covers residential, commercial, industrial, institutional, open space, large open space purchases, which are often left out of commercial data sources. It also covers things like not only new construction, but reconstruction of an existing building with a change of land use, such as conversion of an industrial building to residential, or what's happening now in the city. A lot of office buildings are being proposed for residential. It covers expansions. So if you have a school that has an expansion, then an expansion, then an expansion, we cover that too. It tracks developments from the early proposal stage. So when a developer first comes before a plan commission, an alderman's office, something like that, all the way through when the project is finally completed. Next slide, please. So where do we get all this data? Basically, we get the data from anywhere we can. We rely very much on commercial sources such as CoStar, LoopNet, Zonda, to give us ideas of where development is happening, where new development is happening. Since those are proprietary databases, we then go and confirm all of the data that they give us. We look at developer websites to see what's going on. We scan local news, local intelligence. I get about 6 different commercial real estate blogs every morning. But we'll look at things like the Tribune, the Sun-Times, the Herald, the Shaw newspapers, et cetera. And then also many municipalities, about a third of the municipalities in the region do maintain lists of active developments on their web pages. We do review those. And then we also do contact municipalities individually. And then we'll get information even if somebody on staff happens to see a new building going up on their commute. They'll come over to me and say, did you know that this is going up here? And then I'll look it up and I'll make sure that we do it. So we basically cast a wide net to get as much information as we can. Next slide, please. So what is the NDD web map? Well, NDD web map is a new product that we took the existing database. It was put into into a GIS format back in 2008. And now we finally ported it to an online screen where users can search developments, download data, filter, look at patterns, everything like that. This is what the screen looks like. It has on the map, all of the little areas there are individual developments. Each thing, they're color coded, in this case, by whether they're in the pre-development stage, meaning they're in proposal, they've been approved but not started, that sort of thing, or they're in development, which means they're under construction or they're partially completed. In the case of residential, say phase 1 is done, phase 2 and 3 haven't started yet, or completed where everything is finished. On the right-hand side of the screen, you can see there are filters. They're basic and advanced. So you can filter by municipality, you can filter by county, by land use, by development status. You can filter by date of completion. So if, for example, I want to look up all distribution centers that were completed in the region between January 1, 2020, and now, you can do that. Under advanced, you can limit by size, you can search by developer name, you can search by development name. Developer name is very good for, in a municipal standpoint, if you're a municipality, for example, and a developer comes to you, ABC Development comes in with a proposal, you've never heard of these people, you can actually go to the NDD, look up ABC Development or one of their subsidiary names, find, okay, well, if I'm City of Elmhurst and I see, well, they've done things in Bloomingdale and they've done things in Round Lake and they've done things there, I can then call those municipalities and say, we've got a proposal from this developer. We know that they've done work in your community. What's been your experience with them? How has that worked out? And then also, if I'm Village of Arlington Heights, I can also see what's going on in Mount Prospect, Prospect Heights, Wheeling, Rolling Meadows, that area. And then from economic development standpoint, you can see where the concentrations of new development of various land use types are. So distribution centers or major retail or things like that. Next slide, please. So how does the NDD web map work? Now I'm going to try, unfortunately, I have a live demonstration and the Wi-Fi in this room is going so slowly that my computer is not working. So I'm going to try it from over there. So if you'll bear with me. I just need to insert into internet site if I can. I'd like to. And then I need to share my screen.
Yes. It doesn't show up for.
While Dave is pulling this up, I'll just say the job quality and access tool that you all have seen before, and then this tool are one of the things that we're considering as far as the money that we're getting from the state to do some enhanced technical assistance to communities that are not transportation related. One of the things we're thinking about is how can we actually go into communities and spend a day or two with them and actually show them in real time how these two tools can really help them solve some of their unique challenges. So those are the types of things that we're looking at for that, the new funding. So economic development is going to be one of those places that we're really going to concentrate on because we haven't been able to do as much as we'd like with our transportation dollars. But just as he's pulling that up, just wanted to mention that was one of the.
Okay, so having changed location here, the way you get to NDD, you go to this is the regular CMAP webpage. You go to data, and then under data, there's land use data, and then there is Northeastern Illinois Development Database amongst all of our other land use products. So you click on that, and you can open it in a new window, which hopefully this is going to work. And this is designed for desktop machines and tablets. It is not designed for phones because the map is so detailed and has so much stuff on it that at the size of a screen that you get on a phone, it just really doesn't work. So you get a little splash screen, you get creating map failed. Okay. So something is going very wrong here. Wait, we're getting something. Okay, so we're getting something here. So this is pulling up the regular home screen. Now you can see the developments and the county boundaries will eventually show up. Again, this is going off our internet, which is going very slow today. But say, for example, I am, as I said before, let's see, City of Elmhurst. And I just did some work with them, which is why I'm doing this. So I do check that, I hit apply, and then it zooms in to Elmhurst, and then this shows you all of the developments that are in Elmhurst, whether they're complete in development or pre-development. I don't see anything pre-development, but right here, if you click on table, this will give you tabular data on the various, on all of the developments in here. So you have the county, oh, come on. This is, oh. It's not giving me there, come on. It's not giving me the base of the screen. But it'll give you the development name, the developer, the type of land use, whether it's new construction or an expansion, the number of square feet, when construction, the approximate date construction started, the approximate date construction completed, number of units, if it's a residential development, whether the residential development is rental or owner occupied, whether it's for all ages or age targeted, like 55 plus. It gives you all of that type of information. Plus, you can also just click on an individual thing and get some basic information. Like, for example, this one, McMaster Car Supply Company, status is complete. This was an expansion in 2021, a distribution center. They added 460,000 square feet to this distribution center, and it was completed in 11/2, which means end of the year of 2021. So you can then clear with this button, that clears the thing. But say, for example, you wanted to do my example before, distribution center. So you want to look at distribution center. You hit apply, and this should bring up the actual outlines, but it is not. There they, no, there they are. There we go. These are all the developments that have one of their components being a distribution center. And I should point out, all of the developments in here are done with the model of there's the main development and then there are individual components within the development. So for example, a residential development might have single-family homes, townhomes, a park, a school. Those would be if it's a business park, there would be a component for each individual building with its individual land use. So that's why a big blob here, that's O'Hare Airport. There are distribution centers that are on the property of O'Hare Airport, which is why that shows up. So say we want to limit this to only distribution centers done after January 1 of 2020. So we can apply that filter. And that zooms in a little bit. And then a lot of these are going to disappear eventually. But then we can look at the table and then we can see we've got all of these. And you'll see the development name sometimes repeats. That means that there's more, in this development, there's more than one distribution center. I wish I could get to this slider here because that could show you everything there. But then that's, for example, that's now showing you, if we zoom in, we can look here. For example, this pops up and it's going to be slow. But that shows you then, for example, if you wanted to, under your advanced, you can search by the community area in the city of Chicago, development name, developer, and you can just start typing, like if you type in, oh no, it should eventually give like anything starting with LENN, so Lennar Homes, Lennar Development, et cetera, et cetera. Residential units is greater than, so you can search by size. Building square footage is greater than. And then these filters all then apply to your search. And then you clear it by just clicking those little buttons there. And then there's also on here, there is a place where there's a data dictionary, and it's not showing here, but there is a place where if you want to download everything, there is a button on here at some point where you can go to the CMAP Data Hub and download the entire database for the entire region in any one of a number of formats. So that's basically just a little, that's a basic demonstration as best I can do of what's going on with that. And so if you would go to the next slide, please.
I think we can give everybody some homework to play with this thing, and maybe we can have a workshop later next year and do it again. Thanks.
Yeah, and then just a couple. Oh, sorry. They don't let me away from my desk that often. So as part of our local government initiative, we reached out to all municipalities with an announcement of this. And in the first round of things, 34 municipalities gave us information, the ones that are highlighted here. And they gave us 153 additions and edits to our thing. There's next to the filters on there are two surveys, add development or edit development. And those are used if you're looking at, for example, if you're looking at the map and you know that there's like a big business park that's just going in now, that doesn't show up on the map. It means it's something that we don't have. You can click the add development survey, and then you can provide whatever information you have about that, submit that, I get that, And then I can do the research and I can add that to the development. Likewise, if you see something that exists and it says it's under construction back in 2020 and you know it was finished in 2022, you can hit edit and then you can enter in any information that we got incorrect. And then I get that gets sent to me, and then I can make those corrections and bring that up. The idea being to make this database as accurate as possible, because one of the main things that we use this for internally is to calibrate our land use and transportation models for our forecasts. So knowing where regional growth is, where it's going, what size, what type is very important to being able to forecast further out, because we now know what's happening in the near term. So next slide, please. I think that's it. And that's it. So
Great,
thank you very much for your time.
No, thank you, David. Questions for Dave?
Yep.
Go on, Dan.
Good morning, Dion Bowe with Main Street America. David, how often do you all update the database and reach out directly to the municipalities?
We update I work on this database every single day. So it's continuously updated. We're starting this next fiscal year, I'm bringing on another staff member to help me in this sort of thing. The data that's on the web map is a snapshot of what's on the database. That is updated weekly. I try to update it every Monday or every Tuesday if Monday is a holiday. And as one of the duties, our new staff member that's going to be recruited in, it's be an existing staff member who's going to be helping me, is we're going to set up a regular schedule of meetings where we will go and review data from municipalities. I anticipate either we can hold those meetings over Zoom or we can go out and do a site visit and that sort of thing. I've done several already up in McHenry County. They were our test mule, as it were, and visited with them and then sat down and went through all this stuff. And we want to set that up so that we get, because what we find when we talk to municipalities especially is we get the stuff that's earlier in the process that's just coming before the Plan Commission now, that hasn't made it to the commercial data sources, hasn't made it to the newspapers. And the newspapers, there aren't as many journalists anymore, so they don't cover it nearly as well. And then we also, there are some things that the commercial sources do miss. And so that's pretty much what we try to do.
Thanks. Peter.
Annexations. I recently redistricted Oak Forest and became painfully aware of how annexations work there. But annexations in the timeline often either precede or coincide with a development. And are you picking up these annexations for two reasons? One, obviously the map changes in terms of the boundaries of the municipality, but then also, is that a source for picking up when new developments are in the process of being introduced and planned and approved?
Well, annexations, the way we enter developments into the database, we base it on the county parcel files. So you're proposing a multifamily development, it's going to take up these sorts of parcels, which is why we like to get information directly from the municipalities, because oftentimes they can send us the Plan Commission packet, which will then have the plat on there. It'll have all the parcel numbers. It makes it very easy. The way that when we enter things now, what it does, it takes those parcels, consolidates them into one shape, and then automatically applies the county and the municipality, and in the case of the city, the Chicago community area, to that parcel. Now, if something has not been annexed yet, it will then go in as unincorporated. And that is an issue, because we're also interested for forecasting and knowing when there's annexations. And we do maintain a municipal boundary file that we update yearly that takes into account all those annexations, but we only tend to go as fast as the counties tell us the annexations are going on. And what I do regularly is I'll go in and I'll look at developments that are listed as unincorporated and double check and see if the boundary has now included them. And then I update. And then I edit the thing to say, okay, this was unincorporated Cook, now it's in Oak Forest. That's there. Or if we happen to know from the municipality that such and such is being annexed, then when we put it in, it'll go into the database as unincorporated, and then I'll go right back in and edit it. And then make a note that this was annexed to this thing. And then I also let the forecast team know that there's an annexation here, so they can make note of it. But unfortunately, we do rely, since we rely on the county boundaries, sometimes they run a little behind, and then we have to make adjustments.
Great, thank you. Yes, Kim.
One quick question. I have so many questions, but I'm going to try to keep this really brief because this is very interesting for me. How nuanced do you get in example? A distribution center gets passed by the village board, and the initial intent of this 100,000 square foot building is to store something, and they've got 100 employees, and then 8 months later, the use changes. And it goes from 100 employees to just holding stock, holding inventory, and maybe having 5. Does that matter? The change in use, so to speak?
It does not at current, because what we are looking at is what the building is built as and not how it changes use. That is information I would absolutely love to have, but given 284 municipalities, 7 counties, and all this stuff, we also have a limit on things that go into the development database, that a development has to either consume 1 acre of land, or it has to have 10 residential units or more than 10,000 square feet of non-residential space. And the reason for that is simply there isn't the staff time to keep up with everything. If you say, look at North Center, and you count all the number of buildings where they've torn down a single family home and put up a 3-flat, you could keep an intern working for about 2 months just keeping up with all that. So we have the larger stuff. We do cover some smaller things, like, for example, if a Walmart goes in, we'll cover the little outlot buildings like the McDonald's and the Dunkin' Donuts and stuff that are part of that development, so that we get a good idea of what's on there. But for example, if someone puts a 2,000 square foot 7-Eleven at a street corner, we generally don't cover that because we literally do not have the staff time to do it.
Okay, let me tell you why I posed that question specifically. It's because I've served as a director of planning for various suburban municipalities over the years, and I would have a distribution center come in with 100 people that they're going to employ, and I would call Pace. Hey, Pace, this is right off one of your routes. Can you redirect your bus route so that we can provide that transit access to these employees? And then 8 months later, the use changes. And so now Pace is driving by a facility where they may have been picking up an extra 50 people, 3 people. So that's why I posed that question.
Yeah, and that's actually something for our transportation modeling folks. They are very interested in that sort of thing too, because of the shift of demand across the thing. But there really is no way we can keep up with that. But we do know that that building is still there of the same thing. But for example, if something was built as an office building and then it is converted into residential, then that makes an assumption that you're going to take jobs away and then you're going to put jobs in there. And that goes into our forecasts and into our transportation model as well.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. Anything else? Yes.
Hi, Heather Mullins with the RTA. I'm wondering how searchable the database is. So if I wanted to see what new developments are in like a half mile of a transit station, can I search that in the database, or is it just by municipality?
I'm afraid I didn't quite hear.
Yeah, the question was just how specifically searchable is it? Could you search within a mile of a particular location, or is it just by municipality?
It's just by municipality on the website. However, if you go to the Data Hub and download the entire database, that is in ArcGIS format, and then you can apply buffers. You can do basically all the GIS tricks that you want to do with that. The version that's on the website is a snapshot of the actual database is an ArcGIS database. It just, what's on the website is made more simple, so it displays quicker, it's easier to use, but that's why we give you the option of downloading the entire database.
Great, thank you. I think we've got, well, how about one more question, Tiffany?
Just curious about Tiffany McDowell. Curious about who are the users, who are you seeing using the database, and what ways are people making decisions using the data that you have?
That's a very good question. And unfortunately, I don't have a good answer for it right now because we just released this about 4 months ago. So right now, the only people who have used it have been municipal planners who we've reached out to. And we are looking to publicize it further and get it out there. But right now, it's so new that we don't really know yet.
I would encourage you all to play with it and come back to us. And if you find something really neat, we can hop on Zoom and talk about it. And you can show us what you found.
Sure.
Just want to compliment you on this body of work. Obviously, you've had multiple decades worth of work looking at this data. Question is, how far back does what's the inception of the dates that you started to collect data? So,
We started collecting data in 1987.
I'm sorry, how searchable back? Like if you put in a date, is it 1987? You can start to see what the development patterns are? Or is it
Yes, yes, you can. The one caution is that we've been trying to make sure that the data that's the newest data is the most accurate, and we fix the older stuff as we get to it. So it gets less accurate as you get further back into the past, especially if you go back to 1987, we were just starting the project. So there might have been things that were going on in 1987 that we didn't know about because they started in 1986 and eventually, but what I'm trying to do is get it eventually to where we have good, solid start and completion dates for everything from 1990 on. But right now, 2020 on is good. 2000 to 2020 is pretty good. And before that, you have to take it with a little bit of salt.
And then one suggestion, so I represent the south suburbs.
Mm-hmm.
Not a whole lot of activity there because they're more small site investments and developments there. One of my questions had been about, how are you tracking infill? And essentially you said that's really limited based on size and size of sites. But one thing I think maybe for the new infusion of funding and whatnot is to think about how do you try to capture some more of the development in the south suburbs, because what you're going to see is what I would say is a weighted impact in more affluent, more shovel-ready projects, and you're not going to be catching up. And developers don't want to be the first one in; they want to go in where there's activity. So I think that there's a regressive nature in this map, and so just want to caution you to think about how do you catch up and get some of the more smaller sites, and is that manpower here? Is that also outreach to, communities that don't have as great a capacity to assign staff to, push information? And especially because, as you noted, the newspapers aren't covering, if they're covering Schaumburg, yes, probably. Are they covering you know,
I live in
maybe,
Madison.
yeah, maybe Madison. But, you know, some of the smaller communities under, you know, 15,000, they're not going to board meetings. And one thing also, just, you know, if you're thinking about grabbing extra staff, looking at community agendas, you know, for what's going, you know, what's coming before the board is another way to get a snapshot of what's on the horizon when you have time, you know, after you've collected everything. But really good work. I'm going to go in and navigate and check it out. And we've got a GIS team at SSMMA, and I'm going to point them in the right direction here too. So thank you.
And if they have anything that they can pass along to me, I would be grateful. I would be grateful to get that because the south suburbs are not as well covered. I also maintain our parcel-based land use inventory, so that involves actually looking at parcel by parcel on there. So there is a lot of development in the south suburbs. It's smaller in scale, but you know, as we review those things, we know infill housing is going in and everything like that. So that's something that we need to cover better. And so any help that we can get, we would love.
Great, thank you. Dave, thank you very much. Great work. Good luck with the knee. And let's move on. I know we're running behind here, but Ryan, I can't imagine anything's going on in Springfield.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'll try to be brief in my remarks. I know Seth and Elizabeth kind of cover some of the things I'll be talking about, but again, just want to reiterate our excitement for our Strengthen Communities initiative. This $2 million in funding will, in addition to like supporting some of that technical assistance work, it'll also help us address the directives in the Regional Planning Act that really task CMAP with working on working on issues outside of transportation. So some of the things we talked about, right? Land use, economic development, water, and more. So really excited about being able to do more of this work. It also, you know, give us some resiliency in the face of an uncertain federal funding landscape. So again, just very excited about this funding that we received. And thank you to, you know, some of the folks in this room that, you know, called legislators, slipped in support, and just, you know, were just true advocates in this initiative that's been, you know, that we've been working on for the last several years. So, the next thing too is just the FY26 budget, right? So in terms of budget highlights, the General Assembly, as we're aware, passed the $55.2 billion budget during the final hours of session, and also a companion budget implementation and revenue bills. So this year we saw an increase of spending of about 4% in comparison to the last fiscal year's budget. This included a package of $100 million in what they're calling bridge, or a budget reserve for immediate disbursements and governmental efficiencies. And this is really to help address any unanticipated delays in funding or failures of revenue. So really just kind of, you know, protecting Illinois with a lot of the federal funding uncertainty that, you know, that's anticipated. The revenue package totaled about $800 million, and it includes some new taxes on sports betting, tobacco, vape products, and additional taxes on foreign and out-of-state corporations. So taken all together, the final budget package takes into account an approximate $500 million shortfall in revenue projections since the governor put out his FY26 budget proposal back in February. Additionally, as was the case last year, the budget diverts an approximate $171 million of the motor fuel tax revenue from the road fund to the general fund. So limiting resources to support transportation projects in the state. So and then the last hot topic is transit reform. So obviously the General Assembly, they didn't get transit solved this past session. And so like Elizabeth had mentioned, you know, we anticipate maybe, you know, sometime during veto for the General Assembly to take up, you know, a proposal. They're doing some negotiations this summer and really trying to iron out all the wrinkles and really get things to a good space where there can be some consensus and we can hopefully get something done. So let's see. Sorry about that. Yeah, so really the Intergovernment Affairs team and our partners that put forth the Illinois sales tax modernization, we're going to continue to engage members of the General Assembly this summer and really just be thoughtful about, you know, our messaging and some of those key points in modernizing Illinois sales tax. Again, to put forward some viable funding options for the General Assembly, you know, to consider. And so with that concludes my remarks, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ryan. Questions?
Perfect. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. This brings us to our committee member updates. Are there any updates from committee members? Peter?
Actually, it's a request, and that is that we look at, at some meeting in the future, entrepreneurship ecosystems. They exist within the region and how they are being developed. It's an area where there's a lot of attention, particularly in terms of, new pathways for particular entrepreneurs in underserved areas, and as a way of building wealth and business opportunities. So I think that if we could spend some time focusing on that, I don't know what CMAP's resources are even in that area. Maybe it's something you could look at.
We
but
got
that's
Shannon
an
at
area.
the table. I mean-
Yeah, I would love to help with that, and bring some research to, sorry. Yeah, go ahead. I was just gonna say, I second that. I would love to talk about it and share some things that we're seeing.
And I third it. Main Street America actually has really leaned in very deeply to entrepreneurship ecosystems nationally. And so we're doing quite a bit of work and had quite a bit of research on it. So whatever we can help with, we'd love to.
I think that there's this really interesting conversation happening right now. You may have heard it too, is there's kind of, when you think about entrepreneurship, it's really in two lanes. There's Main Street, like small businesses and business support organizations. And then there's entrepreneur support organizations that focus on high growth tech companies. And I think that the moment right now in Chicago and regionally is this really interesting question about how do we grow the connective tissue between that work and where are there parallels and where are there referral pathways. I think it's a really interesting conversation. Yeah.
Actually, I divide it between opportunity and necessity, entrepreneurship as well. Opportunity could be like the high tech, there's a new market and they think there's something you can develop for it and so forth. Necessity is because people have to survive and they're building businesses because they have a skill and they think they can monetize that skill.
Totally.
And that's where you see a lot of the Main Street, but it's not exclusively the Main Street.
For sure.
I think we have our September agenda.
I was just thinking, I think, done.
Sounds good to me. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter, for that. Anything else? Any other? Yeah, go ahead. Great. Hope that's an indoor party. So anything else from committee members updates? If not, other business, any other business before the committee? All right, let's move on to public comment. We'll take public comment from individuals who are in the audience, first followed by remote participants, followed by written comments. Is there any? I look to staff to see if we've.
There are no
There
written
are
requests or comments.
no public comments. Great. Well, the next meeting, as we noted, is September 25th. That's the next workshop meeting. That'll be populated on your calendar soon. That's at 9:30. Look forward to seeing everyone on Zoom. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn, please. Thank you. Second. Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.